Good morning and welcome to the Courage Coalition. Today's solo cast is all about relationships. It's raw and it's in real time. I'm a little disheveled if you're looking at this on YouTube, but what I want to say is that we we so undermine our relationships. And when I say that, I want to highlight our relationships with self. And I'm going to walk you through this in a way that I hope really begins to maybe ask yourself some questions about your own story. Yesterday, I submitted my article for the local newspaper and I wrote an article on relationships. And it's very important to me. It's a part of the five foundational pillars that hold up the house that is you. And I believe in it so thoroughly, but in real time, what has unlocked for me in the last 24 hours since writing that article is really raw. And so I'm going to share that with you. And I do it only from the perspective of vulnerable authenticity is how others unlock something in themselves. In November of 2025, I co-hosted my first retreat in the wild jungle of Costa Rica. It was a dream that I had for years. And it was so many things. And it was perfection in any way that I could say it was perfection in the grand scheme of being our first retreat. But during the course of those few days, what I realized is that the retreat's theme was awaken. And I was actually awakening something in myself that I didn't even know was asleep. And there were two instances during the process of the retreat that I felt really raw and really vulnerable. One was a song, and it was about the water. And there's so much about the water that I come back to over and over again. But that song, as music has always done for me, really unleashed something in me. And I want you to hold on to that word for a second. And then there was a ceremony, and it's a ceremony of the water, right? And that truly broke something in me. And I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean, it broke the last chain, the last shackle that was holding me to be quiet, to be held in safety. There was a chain that was still holding me, and there was a birthing process that happened in the water that truly opened something in me that had never been opened before. And it was a realization that there was so much more to my relationships, to my stories, that I was allowing to be felt or heard or healed. But it was also a reflection of what I had already done in those relationships in previous time. And I came home and I really didn't even understand what had happened. I'm not going to lie. I knew that there was emotion. I knew that there was something big, but 2026 felt like this year of a lot of a lot of fear, for lack of a better word, a lot of heaviness, and that it would take a different level of courage for me to step into this year. And again, those things happen and I have no idea why. It's just a knowing. And I invested in a mentor program, a program that would help me really step into that, really understand myself in ways that maybe I hadn't understood myself before, knowing that there was something coming. And I had promised myself last year, so actually last summer when we were on Du Mont Blanc hiking for foster children, that I would write 2 books in 2026. And I know that seems really crazy, but there was 2 things that came to me that had been talking to me, had been really nudging me, and I was denying 100%. One was a workbook style book about money and our relationship with money. And the other was, for lack of a better word, a memoir. But it was a memoir that really told my story, but the story and the reflection of how my story has led me to foster children and even bigger, the nonprofit, and really creating systematic change for these children. And that one felt really scary, really, really scary. And I knew without a doubt that I was going to need a lot of help with that one. So those two things felt real. And then on the trail, there were moments of clarity, moments of stories in my head that felt in the moment. There were moments of emotion that just became overwhelming. And it's God's whispers, is what I call them. It's his nudges. I don't do whispers very well. He has to push me. Um, and I knew that, but I still couldn't see how it was all coming to play. Part of what I've realized is I've released that grip of the knowing, of understanding what comes next and just taking that next step. So 2026 came to be, and I wrote Emotional Money. And this was a self published workbook style book that created an accessible tool for those that know they need to dive into their money differently in a way that I coach in, that I do one on one coaching in. So it made it accessible. And it was, or it has been, like, what do I want to say? A very great way to step into the vulnerability of writing and producing something that maybe feels a little scary, right? You don't know how it's going to be perceived, and just releasing that relationship with the fear. And then what has also kind of unleashed for me this year is that I actually decided that I am going to require a different level of connection, relationship, and desire with my husband. You know, Chad and I have been married for 30 years, and we have a great marriage. But in our conversations this year that we've talked about, what does it look like to go to that next level? What is it going to take from us? What is required of us? What has come is that if we don't ask of ourselves that next level, if we don't ask of ourselves that next step, then nothing will ever grow. And growth is a critical part of any relationship. Now, growth doesn't necessarily mean like that next best level, but what if it means releasing something that you've never allowed to be, or asking for something that you've never asked for? Growth can look so different, but we have to require growth even in the relationships that feel good, that feel right, that feel strong. Because if we don't ask and require and request and believe in something different in those relationships, how do we ever do it in the relationships that maybe aren't working, right? The friendships that are taking more, and I mean taking more, I mean energy more than they are giving. In the work that is taking more, it's costing you. The cost of that work, which I talk about in the workbook, is more than the cost of what you receive, the wealth in what you receive. Maybe it's in the relationship with self. If you're not willing to do the work in the relationships that on the outside and the cultural beliefs are worth working for, how do you do the work in the relationship with yourself? So I wrote that book. I really prayed and just said, God, whatever it's meant to be, if it's meant to be for one, great. If it's not, great. Whatever. You told me to do this and I'm doing it. And as soon as I was able to get through that and really process those emotions and all the things, what I realized is it was time to begin the work on the second book. And that book was going to take a lot more of me. So I needed to really prepare myself for that. I needed to prepare the space. I needed to prepare the time to be able to sit and reflect and ask myself some really honest, hard questions. And I've been doing that now for a couple weeks. And what has happened is this beautiful uncovering, this beautiful unleashing of some things that maybe I didn't even understand. I knew the story, I knew the impact, but I didn't know how they had truly begun to not only allow or not only create who I had become, but create the beliefs and values in me that I talk about every day, right? But something really big happened today, and it was this. It's hard. I'm going to cry probably. But today is the 5-year anniversary of my mother in law's death. And so, like, stepping into writing this morning, I knew there was going to be some hard feelings, some hard emotions. But I didn't understand really the biggest part. And so as I'm writing and I'm reflecting and I'm asking the questions, what happened to me was this moment of awareness, two moments of awareness. One is that I was retelling the story of being the 10-year-old girl who was riding her bike to escape. And I would ride my bike every day. I would ride my bike every day and I would escape the need to be in moments at my home that weren't ideal. And I was reliving the emotion, the freedom in riding my bike, but I was also reliving the emotion and the hurt of being gone for hours. And when I returned, no one noticing, no one saying, "Where have you been? Gosh, you were gone a long time." It was just like nothing had ever been gone. That invisibility, that story of invisibility followed me most of my life. And you know what? Honestly, all of my life. And this memoir, this writing is actually just being able to really hold that the way it deserves to be held in a way so that I can truly release that thought that I am invisible, that I am not worthy of noticing. All the things that feel so hard to even say out loud, right? We don't want to say those things. They feel selfish. They feel egotistical. How dare you? But they're our truth and they define everything you do, but they also define every relationship in your life. Your invisibility, your stories, I'm not going to put invisibility on you. That's my story. Define everything you do. But what I also realized in the writing the last couple of weeks is the reason this felt so demanding of me is that one of the reasons I am so passionate about foster care is because I can see myself in a part of their story in hundreds of ways. Not just one, not just two, hundreds of ways. The reflection, the commonalities of what I felt, what I experienced is what I see in these children, and the need to hold them is a part of my why. The need to see them, the need to give them the gift of value and love and knowing is a part of my why. And it's all like ticking. It's like clicking, like, right? You hear the click in you're watching a movie and they're opening the safe and it's like click, click, click. It's like I'm opening that safe. And when that door opens, it's an unleashing. And I can see that and picture that and put that to words right now. But in 2026, my word became unleashed. And I didn't know why. It felt really, what do I want to say, egotistical. It felt ugh, but it felt right. And I didn't understand why. And I just owned it, just took ownership of what's coming to me versus putting it away or making it small. That was that relationship with myself. And so the other thing that came up today was during those bike rides, I could escape the emotion, the feeling, and just take action. Just keep moving, Corey, keep moving. You don't have to feel it. And what I realized is my whole life, I've just kept moving. No matter what was happening in my life, I just kept doing and kept moving and kept being and kept caring and kept doing all the things and never stopped to hold the hand of myself, to care for the hand of myself, to nurture myself. And that action kept me living a cycle that was on repeat that I shared with my family. I shared with my children. Just keep doing, keep showing up, keep performing, keep pleasing, and everything will be okay. But that is false. It will never be okay. And that was the crux of my aha moment this morning, is that I realized as I was laying, and yes, I was laying on that courtyard floor 5 years ago today. Actually, it was yesterday because I left and I had to leave because of COVID. But I was laying on that courtyard concrete ground, bawling my eyes out, like truly losing my ever loving shit in a public courtyard
because of a loss that felt so deep and so critical in my life, knowing that like this human that was taking her last breaths, that defined so much of my life, I would never hear her voice again. And there was something cracking in me, and I thought it was grief. It was grief, but it was something so much bigger. Because what happened this morning is that I was reliving that moment. I was reliving that feeling, that emotion, that timestamp in my brain. And I realized I was also grieving a version of myself that would never return. And I didn't know it then, because remember, we don't know the things that are coming, otherwise we wouldn't move forth. I still believe that what I was grieving or what I was feeling or what I was cracking open in that moment had to do with caring for others. It had to do to making sure my family was going to be okay. And that was a part of the story. But the part of the story that unleashed that shackle is that a version of me was leaving that day that nobody gave their permission to let leave. Nobody knew they had to mourn that version of mom or wife or sister or daughter or friend. Nobody understood on that day that there was a version of me that would never return. And that relationship with self has been an unraveling the last 5 years, and an understanding the last 5 years, and a willingness to address conversations and questions and hard that have never been addressed. That healing, that the actual release of that version has happened through the healing of not only myself and my immediate family, but my extended family. And not because I did anything except for ask hard questions, ask them to have hard conversations, ask questions that maybe they're not asking themselves. And that shackle that truly released this morning was the knowing that even though I didn't give permission for that version of me to be gone, even though my family didn't give permission, it left. It left on that day. It took its last breath along with my mother-in-law. And the evolution of some of the relationships in our family were affected by that. And we didn't know it on that day. And I don't think there's some of us that still know it. But it was an awareness for me to know that it's okay to say goodbye. It's okay to mourn. It's okay to not give your permission, but it's not okay to stay in what's not working, to stay in lack of self, to stay small when something in you is saying you need to speak up, to say, sure, I'll take care of everything, no matter what it takes from me, to say, I'm not smart enough. I'm not knowledgeable enough. I'm not good enough. It's okay to feel hard things, knowing that you are being true to yourself. That relationship with self is probably the hardest relationship you will ever have to grow. But it is the most important. It is the most important for so many reasons. And not because you have a relationship with self out of selfishness or ego or desire to be better than everybody else. Like a true relationship with self, with the knowing and the understanding of why you do the things you do. And maybe holding their hand and actually mourning them for the first time in your life. Mourning those white cross moments in your life that you never did. Maybe it's mourning what you never received or what you received without your permission. But that relationship with self is a relationship that will always serve you, always allow you to go to that next place in your life, whether that's a step forward or a step backwards, whether that's freedom of time or freedom of relationships or freedom of money or freedom of
purpose. When we take that reflection and that growth journey in self, there are so many things that release, so many shackles that are dropped, those chains, those individual links of the chain that are released when we ask ourselves, are you worth the relationship that I want with you? And you answer yes. Until next time, love you, mean it.